right, let's dive into Emily H. Wilson's Inanna. This book, it's not your typical retelling of ancient myths.
Not at all.
Wilson tells the story from three different points of view.
Inanna, Gilgamesh, and Ninshubar.
And that gives us, like a more well-rounded view of these iconic figures.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do today is try to understand how their fates are all connected. And we'll also be talking about some pretty big ideas like power and destiny, and some mature topics Wilson isn't afraid to bring up.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to approach it. By weaving these different stories together, we get a better picture of ancient Sumerian society and what they believed in.
Right. So let's start with Inanna. She's this incredible being, the first Anunnaki child in, generations. Wilson really makes a big deal out of this. She even talks about how Ein, the king of the gods, visits baby Inanna, and he proclaims her the goddess of love and war.
That part is really important. Right away, it brings up the idea of fate, which is a core belief in Sumerian culture. An's proclamation, it's not just a blessing. It's almost like he's setting a specific path for Inanna, one that involves both creation and destruction. It suggests that her life, even her very being, is tied to these forces that seem totally opposite.
Yeah, and it's not all easy for a goddess, right? I mean, look at how she's forced to marry Dumuzi, something that Enki orchestrated.
Right.
It shows that even with divine power, she's still trapped in these power struggles. And they're mostly caused by the male gods.
It's a clever way for Wilson to show the similarities between gods and humans. What Inanna goes through with the male gods is kind of like what women in ancient Sumeria had to deal with. She might be a goddess, it's that the world she lives in still tries to control her.
Okay, but Inanna doesn't just accept that, right? She takes some pretty daring steps, like going to the underworld to see her sister, Ereshkigal. And what's interesting is that she's not just doing this randomly. She's got this mysterious bracelet, a me, that her mother gave her. And she also has some cryptid advice from Ninshubar.
Ah, the underworld. Remember, in Sumerian mythology, it's not just the place where people go when they die. It's like a symbol for things we don't understand, things we try to hide, even the feminine principle, things that were misunderstood, especially in societies where men had all the power. Inanna's journey, influenced by the meet in Shubar, it's like she's searching for deeper knowledge, maybe even confronting the forces that try to control her.
That definitely makes it sound like a dangerous journey. But before we go deeper into that, let's talk about Gilgamesh. In the beginning, he's almost the opposite of Inanna. He's this famous hero, but he starts out reckless and tyrannical.
He's like the classic flawed hero, born with power, but it corrupts him. We see it in what he does early on, locking up King Akka, escaping, and almost dying in the Tigris River. Those early chapters really paint a picture of how arrogant he is and how he just doesn't care about consequences.
But that near-death experience, it seems like a major turning point. Like he suddenly understands that he's not invincible.
It makes him face his own weaknesses, something he's never had to do because of his privileged life. And it's in that moment when he realizes he's not all-powerful that he starts to change for the better.
Right. And then we meet Enkidu, the wild man who becomes his closest friend. They have this really strong bond, something Gilgamesh has never experienced before. It's like this connection challenges everything we thought we knew about masculinity.
Their friendship is interesting because it breaks a lot of societal rules. Gilgamesh, a king, finds comfort and strength in Enkidu, who is wild and untamed. It goes against the strict hierarchy of their world, showing that true power isn't just about being in charge, it's about connecting with others and accepting those who are different from you.
Yeah, and that connection has a huge effect on Gilgamesh. He becomes more compassionate and starts to understand what loyalty truly means. But of course, this makes the loss of Enkidu that much harder. He becomes desperate for immortality and goes on a journey to find it.
That journey, driven by grief and desperation, turns into a fight against fate itself. It makes us ask, can we really escape death? Or are we, even those as powerful as Gilgamesh, still bound by the natural order of things?
That's a question that fits in with Inanna's story, too. But before we dig into that more, let's talk about the third voice in this book. Ninshubar, the warrior who's searching for a place to belong.
Yeah.
Her story starts with exile and rejection, which is totally different from Inanna's divine power or Gilgamesh's legendary status.
Ninshubar's journey is all about trying to fit in when the world wants to push you away. She's this outsider, a warrior raised in a really harsh environment. Her very existence is a challenge to the norms of her spirit clan.
And right away we see her defining those norms. She chooses to leave rather than conform, escaping her tribe to avoid a fate she doesn't want. It's a risky move, considering how dangerous the world is for someone alone.
It shows how strong her character is. She's not just running away, she's searching for something better, a place where she can be herself, even if it means facing the unknown, and that's what eventually led her to Inanna.
Their meeting is a turning point, isn't it? Ninshubar, this exiled warrior, becomes a trusted advisor to Inanna, a goddess. It seems to go against the power structure they both have to navigate. It hints at a deeper connection that goes beyond those societal boundaries.
Yeah.
It really shows the strength that comes from supporting each other, from recognizing shared experiences, even if your power or status is different. Their connection becomes really important for both of their journeys, showing that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is help and empower someone else. So we have these three characters, each with their own struggles, desires, and destinies. But there's a common thread running through their stories, right? This exploration of power, fate, those mature themes you mentioned earlier.
It's in that exploration that Wilson really pushes the limits of traditional myths.
Right.
She uses these characters to dig into issues like gender, sexuality, violence, and loss, making us face the uncomfortable realities of both the ancient world and our own.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that these themes, these challenges, they're not just from a specific time or place. They're part of being human. And it's in those shared experiences across centuries and cultures that we might just find some understanding, some hope.
It's amazing how Wilson isn't afraid to talk about those difficult subjects. She brings them into the story and makes us think about how they affect the characters' lives and maybe even how we understand what it means to be human.
Yeah, you're right. Look at Inanna's journey to the underworld, for example. It's a huge moment in the book, and you could see it as something deeper than just going down into a physical place.
Absolutely. The underworld for the Sumerians, it wasn't just about death. It was about those dark, hidden parts of life, the emotions we try to bury, the things society tells us are wrong, and even the feminine principle. All those things that people, especially in male-dominated societies, didn't understand and were afraid of. And Anna going there, it becomes a symbol of her confronting those very forces.
She's going up against those powerful systems, challenging the rules that have kept women, both human and divine, under control for so long. It's like Wilson is comparing Inanna's fight to the struggle women have faced throughout history for equality and freedom.
It's a powerful comparison and one that really connects with readers today. But it's not just Inanna's journey that deals with these complicated issues. The relationship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu also challenges traditional ideas about what it means to be a man, and it explores how deep human connections can be.
Yeah. Their bond is not like those typical bromances we see in stories. Wilson digs into the complicated parts of their relationship. It's like she's hinting at a level of emotion and closeness that would have been taboo in ancient Sumerian society.
What's interesting is how their friendship turns upside down those strict ideas about masculinity that were so common in their culture. Gilgamesh, who starts out as this domineering guy, he softens because of Enkidu. He learns that it's okay to be vulnerable, to connect with someone on an emotional level. It suggests that true strength isn't just about being physically powerful, it's also about being open and letting someone else in.
And Enkidu, the wild man who grew up in nature, he finds purpose and a sense of belonging through his connection with Gilgamesh. He becomes more than just a friend. He helps Gilgamesh change, helping him understand himself and the world in a deeper way.
Yeah, they go through so much together, like battling that monster Hambada. These experiences make their bonds stronger and force them to face their own mortality. Enkidu's death, as we talked about before, is a huge turning point for Gilgamesh. It's what makes him desperately seek immortality, but it also marks a major change in how he sees life and death.
It's like he finally understands that being truly immortal isn't about living forever. It's about the mark you leave on the world, the way you impact others, and the connections that shape your life.
Right. And that brings us back to that central theme of fate versus free will. All three characters, each in their own way, struggle with this question. How much of our lives is already decided for us? And how much control do we really have over our own destinies?
Inanna, even though she was born a goddess and has a path laid out for her, she's always pushing back against those limits. She wants to be independent and challenges those patriarchal systems that try to control her. Gilgamesh, after a life of privilege and doing whatever he wants, learns the hard way that he can't escape death, even though he tries so desperately. And Ninshubar, the outsider, makes her own fate. She refuses to be defined by where she came from or what society expects of her.
What's really interesting is that Wilson doesn't give us a simple, clear answer to this age-old question. Instead, she shows us how complicated their struggles are. It's like she's suggesting that maybe it's the combination of fate and free will, that constant push and pull, that shapes our lives.
Yeah, That ambiguity is what makes Inanna so thought-provoking. It's not just retelling old myths, it's exploring what it means to be human, those timeless questions we all ask ourselves as we try to make sense of life.
Right. And through those questions, Wilson gets us to think about our own lives. What influences our choices? How do we deal with power dynamics, societal expectations, and our own desires? How do we find meaning and purpose when the world often feels so chaotic and unpredictable?
We've been talking about these big ideas, but there's this one thing that keeps coming up that I want to explore more. That mysterious meat, the bracelet that seems to start Inanna's journey to the underworld. What do you think about it?
Ah, the meat. It's such a fascinating symbol, isn't it? On one level, it represents Inanna's connection to her mother, Ningal, who you'll remember is trapped in the underworld. It's like a physical reminder of their bond, but also of the power dynamics that have separated them.
But it feels like it's more than just a sentimental object, doesn't it?
You're right, there's more to it. The meat is described as dull and lifeless until Inanna gets that important information from Ninjubar, who escaped from the underworld. It's almost like the meat needs knowledge, understanding, to wake up.
So it's not just a random trinket. It's a key that unlocks something inside Inanna. It becomes the trigger for her journey, both physically and symbolically.
Exactly. You could see the meat as a symbol of Inanna's own hidden power. The strength she doesn't realize she has until she confronts those darker parts of herself and the world around her. It's about embracing the unknown, going beyond the limits of her role to discover what she's truly capable of.
That's a powerful message, especially in ancient Sumerian society, where women were often stuck in very specific roles and expectations. It's about taking back control, defying those who try to limit us, and embracing our full potential.
And it's in that act of defiance that Inanna, Gilgamesh, and Ninshbar find their true destinies, even if those destinies are much different than what they first imagined.
It's a reminder that we often grow through struggle, through facing the unknown, and through those deep connections we make with others. But speaking of confronting the unknown, the ending of the novel leaves a lot of unanswered questions, doesn't it?
It does, and that ambiguity, that deliberate choice to leave some things unresolved, is part of what makes Inanna so haunting and thought-provoking. We're left wondering what ultimately happened to these characters. Did Inanna truly conquer death? Did Gilgamesh find peace after his long and difficult journey? What about Ninshubar and her unwavering loyalty?
It's almost as if Wilson wants us to continue the story in our own minds, to wrestle with those unanswered questions and imagine what might lie beyond the final page.
It shows how powerful her storytelling is. She trusts us, the readers, to engage with the material on a deeper level, to find our own meaning in these ancient myths and connect them to our own experiences.
And what's fascinating is that even though the ending is open-ended, it's not necessarily sad. There's a hint of hope in the ways these characters change.
Absolutely. Look at Inanna. Even though she goes through terrible things in the underworld, she comes out transformed with a deeper understanding of life, death, and her own power.
It's not about avoiding pain or escaping fate. It's about facing the darkness, understanding it, and letting those experiences make you stronger. Her journey to the underworld becomes this powerful symbol for facing our own inner demons, those parts of ourselves we often try to hide.
And it's through that confrontation, that willingness to face the darkness, that she steps into her full power. She embraces both sides of herself, the goddess of love and the goddess of war. She goes beyond the limits placed on her, creating a new path, not just for herself, but for anyone who follows in her footsteps.
It's a powerful image of resilience and self-discovery, and it seems to influence the other characters too. Gilgamesh, even though he doesn't become immortal, he finds a new purpose in serving Inanna and protecting his city, Uruk. He learns that real strength isn't about avoiding death, but about living a life that has meaning and fighting for what's important.
And Ninshubar, the fierce warrior who always fought to be accepted, she finally finds a place where she truly belongs, standing by Inanna's side as her trusted advisor. Her journey is a testament to resilience, to defying those who try to put you down or define you, and to forging your own path to belonging.
It reminds us that belonging isn't something we just stumble upon. It's something we create through our choices, our relationships, and our commitment to building a world where everyone has a place.
And as we get to the end of our deep dive, I think it's worth thinking about this question. Given how the novel explores death and what comes after, can we truly escape fate? Or is it by accepting our limitations, our vulnerabilities, and the connection between life and death that we find true freedom?
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it? Like she's asking us to look at those basic ideas we have about life, death, and what controls our existence, and maybe question them.
And It's a question that makes you think on a personal level and a universal one. On the one hand, you've got these characters dealing with their own mortality, desires, and the things that hold them back.
Yeah.
But on a larger scale, Wilson seems to be digging into those big existential questions that humans have been asking forever.
Looking back at the book, I'm struck by the fact that even though it deals with these dark, sometimes even tragic themes, there's still a sense of hope woven into the story.
I agree. It's not a naive hope, though. It's one that comes from struggle and facing difficult things. Each character, in their own way, finds some peace or fulfillment, not by running away from their problems, but by confronting them.
Like Inanna's trip to the underworld, for example. It could be seen as a descent into the deepest, darkest parts of the human mind. But it's also a journey of self-discovery, a process of understanding and accepting those darker parts of herself and coming out stronger and more whole.
Exactly. It's not about pretending the darkness isn't there, but about recognizing it, understanding it, and ultimately rising above it.
Right.
Inanna's transformation really shows the power of resilience, the power of facing your fears and coming out changed for the better.
And that change affects those around her. Gilgamesh, even though he doesn't achieve actual immortality, finds a new purpose in serving Inanna and protecting his city. He learns that true legacy isn't about living forever, but about living a life that matters.
His story reminds us that even the most legendary figures, those whose names we remember throughout history, are still bound by the same truths of life. We all experience loss, we all face our limits, and it's in those moments of vulnerability that we figure out what's really important.
And Ninshubar, the warrior who was always searching for acceptance, finally finds a place where she truly belongs. It shows how deeply we need connection, community, and a sense of purpose that goes beyond what society dictates.
Her journey reminds us that belonging isn't just handed to us. It's something we create through the choices we make, the actions we take, and our commitment to building a world where everyone has a place. And in a way, isn't that what Wilson is doing with this novel?
Yeah.
She's taking these ancient myths, these pieces of stories passed down over generations, and weaving them together into something that speaks to us today, to our worries and our constant search for meaning.
It's like she's connecting the ancient and the modern world, showing us that these stories, these myths, are still relevant today.
Absolutely.
They reflect those timeless human struggles, those questions about power, fate, and what it all means. Questions that every generation grapples with.
Exactly. And by doing that, she's inviting us to join in on that ongoing conversation. Inanna isn't just a retelling of old myths. It's something that makes us think more deeply, a starting point for exploring those big questions about existence that have been with us since the beginning of human consciousness.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Inanna, I'm just in awe of how ambitious Wilson's goal was, but also grateful for the way she brought these ancient tales back to life.
It reminds us that stories can go beyond time and place. They connect us across cultures and generations, and they shine a light on those universal truths that tie us together as humans.
If you haven't already, I definitely recommend picking up a copy of Inanna and taking that journey for yourself. Explore the world of Sumerian mythology, dive into the complexities of these characters' lives, and maybe, along the way, you'll discover some truths about yourself and the world we live in. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.